On a recent visit to South Georgia, I learned for the first time about a story of resistance and resilience from the civil rights movement of the early 1960s. Like far too many stories from the Jim Crow South of that era, this story involves a segregationist racial system doing all it can to oppress its black citizens. And in the face of this oppression, we find young people willing to stand up in opposition to those systems. This is the story of the stolen girls of the Leesburg stockade. This unassuming one-story stone block building was the site of an unimaginable incarceration that occurred during the civil rights movement. Several articles indicate that this is a Civil War-era building, but I tend to lean toward a Georgia historian who indicates from local sources that the building dates from 1930s or the 1940s. Like many white-owned businesses of the Jim Crow era, the Martin Movie Theater in Americus, Georgia, had strict policies regarding its African-American customers. White patrons could purchase tickets at the main box office and enter through the theater's main entrance. Black customers were to enter through an entrance in the back alley behind the theater. Once inside, white and black audiences were strictly separated. In the summer of 1963, protests were frequent in the South, and Americus, Georgia, was a focal point of these protests. In Americus, what had begun as peaceful marches and protests at the local Trailways bus depot and the Martin Theater soon devolved into more raucous gatherings. On this July night, a group of young black girls, ages 12 to 15, protested the segregationist movie theater policies by attempting to purchase tickets at the Martin Theater whites-only box office. The story goes that the police were called. They arrived in great numbers immediately. The police violently attacked the protesters, and a number of the girls were arrested. The numbers arrested range from about 15 to as many as 30. Initially, the girls were held overnight at the jail in Dawson, Georgia, but the next day, about 15 of them were transferred to the Leesburg stockade, some 20 miles outside Americus. Authorities made no attempt to notify the girls' parents, nor did they attempt to press charges or present the girls before a judge. For all anyone knew, the girls had simply disappeared. The conditions in the stockade were abysmal. It was a single narrow but long room with bars on the windows. There was no sufficient running water, no beds, no furniture of any kind, no working toilet, nothing but dirty and unsanitary conditions. The girls were forced to sleep on concrete floors or on a few dirty mattresses, and what little food they were given was poorly prepared and in insufficient quantity. The girls report that joining them in the stockade were mosquitoes, vermin, and at one point, apparently for the amusement of the jailers, a snake was thrown into the stockade. The girls were never charged with any crime, and they were held without due process. Eventually, a young photographer learned of the girls' place of imprisonment and was able to clandestinely capture some photographs of the girls and their conditions. The photographer was Danny Lyon, and his photographs were published in the SNCC newsletter and in Jet magazine. Once his photographs were published and the plight of the girls became public knowledge across the country, national pressure mounted on authorities to release the girls and return them to their families. The girls' release occurred in early September, about 45 days after they had been placed in the stockade. Any news of their incarceration and release was overshadowed by the 16th Street Baptist Church bombing in Birmingham that same week. Although charges were never filed, authorities did send a bill to each of the families, charging $2 per day for each of the girls' stay in the facility. The site of the stockade, along with a Georgia Historical Society marker, is surrounded by a tall chain-link fence. On one side is a local high school football field. and the other appears to be the school bus parking area. The building itself is surrounded by several hundred square feet of open, well-groomed land. There is an unlocked gate to the area. As this is a part of history that the local population would best forget, I did not try to get closer to the structure. In fact, while just standing at the fence filming the site, a disquieting shiver of awareness ran down my spine as the occasional lone car passed on the highway behind me. For many years, even into adulthood, the girls did not speak publicly of the events from July 1963. However, in recent years, the story has finally been told, and several news stories and documentaries have captured first-hand accounts from the women who endured this injustice. The Leesburg stockade girls are finally able to tell their story, but the pain of being confined to that one-room cell for nearly 2 months lingers. Dr. Shirley Green Reese recalls feeling, quote, hurt inside. I had been damaged. I felt like I wasn't whole. I didn't feel like a young girl anymore that had worth. Life just wasn't the same. Dr. Green Reese helped lead the initiative to have a marker from the Georgia Historical Society placed at the site in 2019. The Leesburg Stockade site and marker are located at 323 Leslie Highway in Leesburg, Georgia. On the busy 2-lane highway, it's easy to miss the marker and the building behind the chain-link fence. This is another example of history hidden in plain sight.